Hey folks, and welcome to They Might Be Racing. Today I've got a kind of interesting story for you. Here I've got a 2001 Pontiac Grand AM, which has suffered a very humorous incident, or not humorous for the owner though. So at one point in time, a previous owner put a cold air intake on this particular car, and I actually mocked the owner of the car regularly for having it, because in Arizona cold air intakes are more or less useless. But right now we're in the midst of monsoon season, and when we get monsoons out here, what happens is if you're caught driving, quite frequently you end up having to drive through some fairly ridiculously large puddles. And what happened to this particular vehicle was it got trapped out during a monsoon, and in the attempt to turn a corner, he lost just enough velocity for the water in the puddle to catch up with the car. Well, because of the nice little cold air intake on this particular car, which is about as low as it can possibly go without dragging on the ground, it ended up sucking up a bunch of water. Normally this would be catastrophic and the particular car would no longer exist because the engine would go kablooey. What happened in this particular case is the second it sucked up the water, the car instantly stalled, so we ended up being lucky with this. The vehicle was then immediately towed home. All the spark plugs were pulled out, Marvel Mystery Oil was put in all the cylinders, and then the engine was cranked over without the spark plugs. So we managed to shoot a bunch of the water out the spark plug holes, and in addition to that, I gave it 24 hours to drain down through the block into the oil pan. It was then subsequently drained, oil replaced, and test driven. Car ran okay initially, and then suddenly what occurred is that idle speed would shoot up to anywhere between 1,700 and 2,000 RPM, and while driving out on the highway, the car would not shift correctly. So, in other words, you'd get the car up to about drive, stomp on it, and then the automatic transmission wouldn't shift down. On this particular car, it has a very small throttle position sensor, and that throttle position sensor is what winds up being part of the control of the idle, as well as the shifting in the transmission. And the throttle position sensor is actually in line just after the mass airflow sensor, before the throttle body, as the air enters into the engine. And so what we surmise is that when the water was pulled up through the intake tube, is that it damaged the throttle position sensor. So if you have a Grand AM that idles poorly, won't shift correctly, this is one of your culprits. Now, one of the problems we had initially was that the car had enough go haywire in it suddenly that even though it threw an engine light, it didn't throw any codes. Or any usable codes, I should say. So initially what I had to do was pull off the intake, pull off the mass airflow sensor, everything up to the throttle body, give it a good cleaning, put it all back together again, and then drive it around. And with all of that cleaning and reconnecting and ensuring that all the connections and everything were good, as well as disconnecting the battery to reset everything, we ended up getting a viable code, and that code pointed directly to the throttle position sensor. So this is something that anyone, a home mechanic, can easily do. What you need is a socket with a number 20 star bit on it, and what we're going to do next is we're going to remove the sensor and then replace it. Now, to locate the throttle position sensor, directly below me is the mass airflow sensor, and on a normal car, this here would go to the air cleaner. This actually goes to the cold air intake. If you follow this line of rubber plumbing up to the throttle body, on the back of the throttle body, in the back side here, is the throttle position sensor. Now, it's got an electrical connector on it, and these get brittle. These are plastic. They get brittle with age, so you want to be very careful when removing it. Once you've got that out, you'll see I've got it out here. It's a 3-wire connector. You then take your number 20 star bit, get in behind there, and it's 2 screws, one on the top, one on the bottom. The trick is getting a second set of fingers in there to keep from dropping the screw. Go ahead and unscrew it. through number 2, and you've got the old one removed. In fact, I can actually see condensation on the old one. Now, here's the trick to installing these. So, you will see here that there is a D shape in the center, and then you'll see here there's a locationing pin. So what you have to do is you have to fit that over, and then once you've got it fitted, rotate it until the locking pin is at the right position, press it up, and then tighten the screws back in. The other thing you want to make sure when you get a new one of these is that the O-ring is in good shape. So we go ahead and we fit it, just double checking to make sure that there's no additional moisture here. And got it threaded, and then set it so that it's locked into the positioner. And rethread our screws. So from here, once you've got your screws threaded back in, make sure this is a plastic part. Do not over torque it. You want to make it just hand tight. What you do is you make sure to remember to reconnect the wiring harness, and then once you've got that done and it's all tightened up, you're done. Take it out for a test drive. What you should note immediately is that your idle should drop to normal on this particular on these types of cars, which is somewhere in the range of about 800 RPM. In addition to that, when you take it out and drive it, once you get it up into D and then you stomp on it, it should almost immediately downshift into a lower gear in the automatic transmission, and you're good to go. Part is about $30. I picked it up at my local auto parts store, so for $30 and 15-20 minutes worth of work, you can have a well-running car again. Talk to you later.